The Mount Rushmore of Knives. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of Knives? But before we answer that, we need to set some ground rules. Now, this fictional Mount Rushmore is not your 4 rarest knives or your most expensive knives. It's not even your most used knives. It's the 4 knives that form the pillar of your knife collection, the 4 most important knives in your collection, the Jenga blocks that keep the tower upright. In this video, we're going to discuss one of these knives, the ZT-0562. Now, let's go take a closer look at the Theodore Roosevelt of my collection. Hello and welcome back to Blade Insider, where we discuss all things knives. And today we're focused on the ZT-0562CF. Now, I started this video by talking about the 4 most important knives in my collection. To me, this means the most iconic knives. These 4 knives are the ZT-0562CF, Spyderco Paramilitary 2, Buck 110, and the Benchmade Osborne 940. To me, these knives are the most important to start a collection with. All are very different from each other, and all have been very popular for a long time. But before we take a closer look at the ZT, I want to ask you to consider subscribing to this channel. We can only build this channel with your help. We put out new videos every week and concentrate on knives and the equipment used to make these videos. So, ring the bell and you'll be notified of our new content when it's released. ZT Knives is a high-end arm of Kershaw. It stands for Zero Tolerance, which is a reference to its manufacturing tolerances. And I've discussed this in the past, but Kershaw has a relationship with Rick Hinderer. Hinderer Knives is an Ohio company that makes 4 $500 knives. Their signature knife is the XM18 in the 3-inch and 3.5-inch versions. Hinderer started to design knives in the mid-1980s with a focus on first responders. His knives are designed as a hard-use tactical knife rather than works of art. As a tactical knife, they have great ergonomics. His designs feel great in your hand. But part of his niche and business strategy is to make his knives highly modifiable. You can modify just about every part of this knife, but it's going to cost you to do so. Hinderer has had a long relationship with Kershaw, and several knives have had that Hinderer design to them. These knives are some of the most popular knives that Kershaw sells. They include the Cairo 2, Ferrite, Agile, ZT-393, ZT-566, and the 562. His designs can best be described as beefy knives with great ergonomics. They're all solid knives. The 0562 is probably the best known of these collaborations. They come in titanium and carbon fiber flavors. Now, the important difference between the semi-custom Hinderer knives and the Kershaw knives is that the Kershaw doesn't have all the options to modify the knife. Now, let's go to the bench and take a closer look at the ZT-0562CF. We rate our knives on 5 factors: design and aesthetics, carryability, materials, usability, and value. Then we give it an overall score. Now, our first factor is design and aesthetics. Looking at the scale of this knife, we see that the CF stands for carbon fiber. ZT does a carbon fiber very well. Not only does it have the scale pattern, but it also has a slight texture to it as well. The pivot is distinctive, and it's set off nicely with the 4 black screws and the 4 black tube spacers. On the clip side of the knife, we see that we have a titanium scale. The flipper tab looks like a dorsal fin without any jimping on it. Now, the knife has 2 thumb studs, but they're really not used to deploy the knife. The knife is only deployed by the flipper tab. The blade runs on KVT ball bearings. Now, the blade shape is a drop point with the plain edge. It has a nice swedge on the spine that gives the blade a nice shape. On the show side, we have the typical ZT branding, and on the clip side, information regarding the designer and blade material. On the spine of the knife, we have some jimping as well as on the belly. Now this jimping isn't aggressive. It's just the right amount of jimping. It's not going to tear up your thumb, but it does give you some stability in holding and bearing down on the knife. I love the design of this knife. It's a rock solid tool, but with flair. I love the carbon fiber scales, the design of the flipper tab, the blade shape, and the gentle curve of the handle. For design and aesthetics, I'm going to give this knife a 5 out of 5. The next factor is carryability. Let's run the tail of the tape on the 0562. The blade steel is CPM 20CV. The blade length is 3.5 inches, and it has a hardness factor of 60 to 62. The blade thickness is 0.156 inches, and the closed length is 4.8 inches. The overall length to this knife is 8.3 inches, and the knife weighs 5.5 ounces. This is a bigger mid-sized knife. Let's see how it compares to some of the standards. Here's the Delica. Ontario Rat 1, very comparable in size. Benchmade Osborne 940. And Spyderco's Paramilitary number 2. Again, it's a bigger knife than the Paramilitary number 2. Finally, let's see how this knife fits in a pair of jeans. Well, when we look at a pair of jeans, we can see that it's a big knife and it's going to take up a lot of the pocket. Now, it's not going to fit into the watch pocket of your jeans, but with that deep clip, that knife will sink all the way down into your pocket. One of the best deep clips that I can think of on knives. And the secret to it is that the clip goes and it's fastened on the inside of the scale rather than on the outside, giving you that extra deep clip. Now, once back in the pocket, you're definitely going to feel the knife in the pocket. And we do have that flipper tab that will be sticking out. So there may be some concerns about putting your phone in the same pocket as the knife. This is a bigger knife, so it's not going to carry as well as, let's say, a Benchmade Osborne, but they're two different knives. Also, you need to be concerned about the flipper tab sticking out and rubbing up against your phone. It has a great deep carry clip, but it is a bigger knife. So for carryability, this knife gets a 3.5 out of 5. Our next category is materials. There are some top-end materials on this knife. The show side has carbon fiber scale, which is very nice, and some of my favorite carbon fiber on knives. The clip side is solid titanium scale, which is consistent with the other Hinderer knives. If you're going to deduct any points, I would say that the clip is probably not titanium, but that's pretty much the same with any knife. Again, the blade is top-notch, CPM 20 CV steel. Any regular on my channel knows it's one of my favorite steels. Let's see how this steel compares with VG10. For ease of sharpening, 20 CV rates a 2 out of 10, a 9 for edge retention, a 6 for toughness, and a 7 for corrosion resistance. VG10 is easier to sharpen and ranks a 6 out of 10, 5 for edge retention, 4 for toughness, and 7 for corrosion resistance. So 20 CV steel maintains its edge longer and is a tougher steel. All in all, ZT put premium materials in this knife. It's a tough knife that will maintain its edge. It gets a 5 out of 5 for materials. Our fourth category is usability. This knife was designed by a first responder for first responders. It's a brute of a knife and falls into that tactical category of knives. You don't bring this knife into the office to open envelopes. It has very good ergonomics and it fits my hand like a glove. My thumb rests naturally on the spine of the knife where it has just the right amount of jimping. My fingers fit into the grooves on the belly of the knife and the index finger slides into the flipper. This knife is easily opened and closed with one hand. Let's see how this knife cuts. Goes through that paper like butter. Does this knife succeed as a tactical and first responder knife? Yes. Will the knife handle all those tough jobs we reserve for our beater knives? Yes. Is it a great office knife? Probably not, but you have a lot of options out there if that's what you're looking for. For usability, this knife gets a 4.5 out of 5. Value is a mixed bag with this knife. On one hand, it's a $260 knife, not cheap by any measure. And when you compare it to other well-built knives, it can be $50 to $100 more money. Now the ZT has better materials, but it's still a lot of money. But you should only be comparing this knife to Rick Hinderer's own signature knife, the XM18 3.5 inch. It shares many of the same design elements with the XM18, and they're both very similar knives. The XM18 is $420 that can be fully modified. And once modified, that price can be approaching $600. So $260 seems like a bargain compared to $420. You really hate paying $260 for a production knife, but the materials in this knife are at the top of the scale, and the knife is a value when you compare it to the XM18. So for value, this knife rates a 4 out of 5. If we add up all the scores, this knife gets an overall score of 4.4. That's a pretty high Blade Insider score. I can't emphasize how good this knife fits in your hand, but it's a bigger, overbuilt knife, and this may turn off some people. But it's a really good knife. And if you don't want to spend $260 on this knife, you still owe it to yourself to try out a Hinderer design. Kershaw makes a Cryo and Cryo 2. Both these knives have similar designs and run between $30 to $50, depending on if they're on sale. And they're usually on sale somewhere, so pick one up. So, do you own a Hinderer? What do you think about the 0562 and how it compares to the XM18? What's the most you'll pay for a knife? These are just some of the topics you can discuss in the comment section below. I try to read and respond to all the comments, so let me know what you think. And again, consider subscribing to this channel. This community that we're building needs you. So hit that subscribe button, and if you get anything out of this video, hit the like button and let us know we're doing something right. Well, that's all for this week, but I'll see you next time. And as always, be responsible, be respectful, be happy.